For about 2 years now, people have been asking me about disorganized attachment style and how it wrecks relationships. In particular, people ask me based on my past clinical experience as a marriage and family therapist, and now as the attachment specialist, what they need to do to stop disorganized attachment from ruining their marriage or their long-term relationship. So for those of you who are new here, hi, welcome. Glad you're here. You might also be wondering how the blend of both anxious and avoidant attachment styles inside one person can lead to major disruption for you and maybe for those of you that have loved ones. I also ran a poll a few weeks back asking how many of you here on this channel identify with disorganized attachment style. And we got about 1,600 votes. Over half of those said, yes, I fit disorganized style. So I know it's a pressing matter for this community. Okay, the research indicates that maybe about 5% of the adult population has disorganized attachment style, but that's outdated from about 20 years ago. Research now is indicating it could be up to 5 or 10%, possibly 10% of the population now dealing with this. Okay, so it's definitely seen explosive growth. And there's a good reason for that. If you've been watching my channel, you know about the social issues that are breaking down families. You know about how attachment issues are getting worse. I have tons of videos on those. We're not going to go into that too much today. I want to focus on disorganized attachment style first. But today, in particular, I want to address all of these questions. Give you the answers that you're looking for about disorganized style and show you what to do if you're trying to make a marriage work with disorganized attachment style involved. So let's start today by talking about how disorganized style leads so many people to emotional tragedy. First thing you need to know is that people with disorganized attachment style often experience intense and unpredictable emotions. They might swing wildly between clinging to their partner and pushing them away. They might find deep love and connection terrifying. One thing that I tell people with disorganized attachment style is that when you come into the relationship, you might be avoidant at first and keep people out. And then as they crack through your armor, they get inside and you flip to becoming anxious and approval seeking and desperate for that love and connection. Other times you'll be anxious on the outside, desperate for love and connection and approval, but the moment someone returns that love and you click in with them, you flip to avoidance and you are terrified of getting hurt. I've seen both of those happen. And sometimes you flip back and forth. Even if you manage to hold on, you play games where you flip back and forth, not meaning to, but you're constantly flipping based on stress and how the other person's reacting. Disorganized attachment style forms in childhood from repeated wounding over and over and over. It wasn't enough for you to believe that you are unlovable. You have to armor up with additional layers of avoidant attachment style on the outside to protect yourself. It could be severe or just repeated over pain over and over. Many times, some of the worst abuse cases, disorganized attachment style, okay? It gets confused sometimes with borderline personality disorder. Some people call it quiet BPD. A lot of people who self-diagnose as borderline personality disorder do not have borderline personality disorder. That's one of the criteria they give us as licensed marriage and family therapists going through and getting credentialed is if someone comes in identifying as borderline, they do not have borderline. That's one of the defining features they tell us in graduate school behind the scenes. So if you've identified as self-identified as borderline, probably it's disorganized attachment style. Probably a lot of the symptoms are similar because this is a small subclinical non-personality version of it, okay? Often. There's also quiet disorganized, what I've retermed, which is an almost avoidant on the outside at all times, but a quiet little core on the inside of anxious that when somebody really overwhelming kicks through your wall and gets in, you go, oh my, and they're with you and they're very quiet. Oh my is the right for oh my. And they come in and then you become approval seeking because it's someone who actually has broke through your wall. That's more quiet disorganized. If you're familiar with the story of Rapunzel, you've maybe seen the Disney version, she might be a little bit more quiet disorganized. Massively avoidant on the outside, someone gets in, she goes, oh my, and becomes very approval seeking once that person does make it in. Okay, one example. Now, the disorganized person could also, the louder version, constantly seek reassurance or accuse their spouse of infidelity, creating suffocating, distrustful environments all the time. A lot of people who are accusing their spouse all the time of cheating on them, disorganized style. This is why we often say, well, if they're accusing you of cheating all the time, they're the one cheating. Well, maybe you're not, but the people sometimes most likely to cheat are some of the more manipulative variants of disorganized style, which often will cheat and often will also be very suspicious. So it's a strong correlation. Doesn't mean someone is cheating, but it probably means that they are dysregulated enough that they probably could cheat, typically. And they've been cheated on numerous times themselves, usually. Now, disorganized partners often struggle with low self-esteem and difficulty with self-soothing. This can lead to emotional manipulation or controlling behaviors in an attempt to feel secure, further straining that marriage. And I'm going to clarify this. Disorganized people, what we've often called fearful avoidant, are not bad people. Many of them, in fact, are simply suffering. And the things that come out that hurt other people or wound their relationships are not intentional. It's not designed to be horrible. And I'm not here to say that they're all cheaters either. But the dysregulation, the chaos, they are not in control. Their fear is in control, and therein lies the problem. Intimacy and vulnerability trigger unresolved past trauma feelings for someone with disorganized attachment. It doesn't have to mean full PTSD, but the trauma response activates. This can manifest as emotional withdrawal, anger outbursts, accusations of betrayal, further straining that relationship, pulling away, running away, fear, terror. They might idealize their spouse at first, then quickly become hypercritical, fearful of abandonment style. I've seen people have even just like wild swings between how attracted they are to your spouse based on how they feel at that moment. Okay. Here's a little analogy that I give that usually makes people laugh, but a disorganized person is like someone who has built you a beautiful home in the woods. This is my beautiful cabin. I built it for us. You walk in, you both close the door, and they go, "Oh no, it's real now." So they grab a can of gasoline and start splashing it everywhere. And you go, "What are you doing?" "Nothing." And they're splashing gasoline all over the walls and curtains, and they light a match, throw it in. It sets on fire. They go, "I'll be right back." And they jump out the window, crash, run into the darkness, and say, "Okay, I'm finally free." And they say, "Oh, but now I'm all alone in the woods. I'm so lonely." And they stop and they say, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" So they say, "I've got an idea." They run back to the cabin. They kick in the front door and say, "I'm here to save you from this freak gasoline fire." Then they grab you, jump out another window, and run off into the night and say, "I'm going to build us the most beautiful second cabin you have ever seen. Don't worry about a thing. I've got it under control." This is being with a disorganized, loud, disorganized, especially kind of person. It's that level of swing. They are not trying to hurt you. They are not trying to be unkind. They are not trying to be unloving. They do not mean to do those things, but they will set freak gasoline fires occasionally, emotionally, usually. Usually it's not physical fires, but usually it's emotional arson, okay? To cover their escape. And then they regret it. And then they're lonely and they really miss you because they are actually bonding with you. The difference between disorganized and avoidant is that disorganized people actually are experiencing the oxytocin bonding. They know what it's like. They're just petrified of it. And the difference between a disorganized person and an anxious person is the disorganized person can flip and shut everything off and close off the relationship at a moment's notice as needed and become avoidant and run. They're not just a blend of the two. It's the way that the two interact back and forth based on what they've experienced to stay safe in this dangerous, painful world. Now, these issues lead to massive instability in long-term romantic connections. It almost guarantees unhappiness in marriage for both sides. The impact on the spouse. Okay, what is it like to be married to somebody with disorganized attachment style? Well, a big problem is emotional exhaustion for both sides, but let's talk about the spouse for a minute. The unpredictable behavior and the emotional intensity can leave the spouse feeling drained, emotionally exhausted. One thing I hear a lot is, "We were so happy in the first 5 months and then they changed. I don't know what I did. And I don't know how to get back to where we were. What did I do wrong? Why don't they love me anymore? I don't get it. And how do I bring it back?" A lot of times they only see that happy person again during times following horrible problems because the person goes into repair mode desperately. So they only see that happiness after horrible pain, and it wounds the other person pretty bad. Confusion and insecurity is another piece. That push, pull dynamic with difficulty communicating and creating confusion about the relationship status and the partner's true feelings for them. Okay, it's horrible. A lot of times, disorganized people create more wounded people. Now, they tend to pair up with disorganized people in the first place. So a lot of disorganized people hurt other disorganized people and then just create this boiling pit of disorganized people wounding each other over and over and over and over. But sometimes they break containment and they go out with other people and then break hearts, sometimes often without meaning to. Now, feeling unseen and unheard is another problem. Disorganized partners, they might struggle to express their needs clearly. They leave their spouse feeling unseen, unheard, not understanding anything in the relationship. The disorganized person is so focused on their own feelings that often there's not room for the other person's feelings. It's really sad. And if you're quiet disorganized, you might not be setting gasoline fires. You probably are not. Quiet disorganized people, especially the primarily women that I talk to who have quiet disorganized style, they don't usually set gasoline fires. They're used to other people setting gasoline fires, and they simply quietly go around and put out the gasoline fires. They're like, yes, this is just what people do. I just kind of expect this in my life. They're very quiet. They're very manly. They're very polite. They're the sweetest people on earth. They really are. And they just, another gasoline fire. Oh, I wonder why they lit that one. And they put them out. But unfortunately, what they accidentally do is they show a lack of interest, disinterest, because they don't open up to anyone. Because they have a core of anxiousness on the inside, so they refuse to open up. They stay avoidant and disconnected from others. They wait for other people to come to them, but then they don't really open the door. They kind of just look through the slot and speak through the slot. That's all they understand. They show disinterest. They make other people feel uncared for, unaccepted, sometimes unloved. A quiet, disorganized partner can still make you feel unloved, and they won't mean to. Probably if you're watching this, quiet, disorganized people out there right now, you're probably horrified at the idea of making somebody feel unloved, but that is a side effect often of that quiet, disorganized style. Whereas loud, disorganized is, well, emotional arson. Over and over and over. They kind of have like a fear of fire after that. It's like Frankenstein's monster, fire bad. That's what they come out. So you come out of a relationship with that fear. Okay. So what can you do? I'm all about solutions here on this channel. You guys know that. I'm not here just to beat anybody up. Yes, you probably feel sad through the beginning of this. Okay. I understand that. Let's talk about what we can do. Okay. First, track your shifting emotions. The emotions shift probably way more often than you might think is necessary. And that's probably true. Track them. Define them. Build a pattern. Understand them. Okay? It doesn't mean you have like bipolar disorder. I'm not saying that, but track your emotions. Track when things happen. Track when they go wrong. For example, after a deep, emotional, intimate evening together, the next day, do you feel like you have to claw your skin off, transform into a wolf, and stalk off into the forest to go kill a deer and paint yourself in its entrails? If that's how you feel, just to escape from humanity because you had a nice emotional evening with a partner, now you know. Okay? Emotional connection causes entrails and emotional arson. Boy, we're getting colorful here today. I love it. Track those emotions. Track them with your partner. Talk to them. I bet your partner knows your cycle. So have some guts, pun intended, and talk to them about those patterns, okay? Second thing you should do, have an open, honest conversation about the impact with your partner and what they're experiencing. This is going to hurt. You know what? I know I've been really kind of all over the map. I'd really like to hear from you. Where are you at with that? Because is that hurting you? Am I hurting you? Is this causing a big problem? Are you about to give up? Maybe you're not. I need to know that too, because you're probably thinking they're going to give up on you. The next thing you could do is schedule check-ins, right? So if there's problems, don't let them boil up. One thing that disorganized people do is let problems boil, boil, boil. And then when they get bad enough, you freak out, flop your attachment style and run. Very often, okay? Anxious, 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 pop, avoidant, run, screaming. Very common for that stress cycle. So if you can cut it at the beginning, you don't even have to go into anxious mode. You just go. The next thing you can do is establish healthy boundaries about paranoia and secret fears. You can handle those. Hey, here are some feelings I'm having. You know how I sometimes have some irrational fears. Can we talk about some of these challenges I'm having? Here's a thought I've had. Is this real? Is this really what you're experiencing? It's called reality testing, okay? Reality testing. The next thing is to establish healthy boundaries about what's allowed to be said to each other. No hurtful words, no devaluing. Sometimes loud, disorganized style devalues the other partner. Well, you're just this anyway. You never really loved me anyway. Those things can come out, and it can be very hard to take that back later. So establish some boundaries about what's allowed to be said and what's not. Big key piece that I recommend immediately, trust building activities and exercises. Vasopressin bonding is more urgent than oxytocin at first because oxytocin is usually actually what's driving the cycle of fear and terror for the disorganized person. But if you can do the vasopressin bonding, their brain can trust you to work with them through fear and challenge. So then there's no need for emotional arson and deer entrails. You can actually just work through it. Okay, they might get scared, but then you fix it. As you work through these and make changes, okay, there's something called the 4-week rule, okay, the principle of seeing changes. If a person is actually going to change, in the first week, they're talking about that change and building it up. In the second week, they're doing it, and you're starting to see some good results. In the third week, they're really taking off and ramping up. In the fourth week, they are off the chart and loving their new pattern of behavior because it feels so good to them. And you're almost asking them to rein it in. If somebody is not really changing, in the first week, they're talking about how great they are for changing and how sorry they are that it took so long. In the second week, they're starting to talk about, well, okay, I'm doing a good job, but how long are you going to hold this against me? They're already asking for the ending and the cap of how long it's going to take. And by the third week, they're tapering off, but you're being nice, trying to encourage them so you don't say anything. And then by the end of the third week, they're back to their old behavior pattern. That's what you need to look for, okay? A disorganized person who's ready to change, boom, 4 weeks off the chart. Now, I have to be very clear about this point. A huge portion of the people who come into my attachment circle mentorship community, we do 2 group calls a week. You get direct help from me. The reason most of the people in there are disorganized attachment is because they have to have a third-party spotter to keep them accountable, do reality testing, and it's exhausting to have that on your partner. So usually you need a coach, a mentor, a guide, a priest, a pastor, an attachment specialist in a community. You need some help checking your thoughts when your thoughts are going to turn against you. So I recommend jumping into my attachment circle community. If you want to fix disorganized attachment style, it's actually the best resource there is because you need some reality testing, you need skills, you need head checks, and you need a place to come and vent and then get corrected by people that you can trust. I'm also running the Attachment Immersion Retreat at the end of this year up in Vail, Colorado. You can have experiences that will reprogram you and show you the difference. That's also a great resource for people with disorganized style or their partners, okay? A lot of massively successful business owners have disorganized attachment style. So if that's you, come to the retreat and or pop into my mentorship community. You can find links for both of those down in the show notes below. But you need some third-party help. Your partner's not going to be enough, probably. So the biggest takeaway I want you to take from this video is this. Disorganized style, as disruptive as it feels and as overwhelming as it can feel, is something you can beat because it's a learned behavior pattern. That means it can be unlearned with the right experiences. But you are never going to solve this style alone inside your head by yourself, because that's where the problem is. You will need help because you can't trust your own mind not to trick you. It will sabotage you. So the first thing you need to do is identify someone stable in your life who can help keep you accountable, test reality, and make sure that it isn't your spouse. Because your spouse, they can't be your rock who keeps you from hurting them while also trusting you and being intimate with you. It's impossible to be someone's mentor and spouse at the same time. It just does not work, okay? That is way too much pressure. Get a third party that you can trust, that you know will call you out when you get irrational and when you get afraid. And if you need my help with this, reach out immediately, okay? I am here to help at support@adamlanesmith.com. I am here to assist. Just remember that these emotions are not based on reality, and you do not have to stay feeling like this forever. You can change. And the way you change is to experience better relationships. Go out, get a spotter, and have some new experiences. You can reprogram disorganized attachment style.